Hello everybody, you're listening to The Archer on 106.6 FM Wickham Sound. This is the weekly radio show where we chat about the local arts news. We have a different guest on each week. We head over to the Rhylight Zone for a short story and or some poetry. We catch up with Twangling Jack Ford over in the Oak Shed, and we play local, unsigned and or independent music. As always, you can find us on Facebook. If you search for The Archer on Wickham Sound, you should be able to find us. We repeat on Wickham Sound on Monday nights. We're on the Wickham Sound Listen Again, iTunes, Spotify and wherever else you get your podcasts. We're normally on at 7 p.m. On a Tuesday, but sometimes we get moved over to Wednesday if Wickham Sound are playing a football game at home. And yeah, you can reach out to me here at the studio by dropping me a line on dane.cobain@wickhamsound.org.uk. That's dane.cobain@wickhamsound.org.uk. So this week, we are going to be chatting to the one and only Dale McGinnes, who is a member of the band Chiltern Groove. But before we do that, we're going to head over to the Rhylight Zone for the latest instalment of formerly The Rise and Fall of a Social Network, which is a fiction novel by myself, Dane Cobain. We've been serialising in recent weeks, so if you miss an episode, you can always listen on Catch Up. It's available on Amazon in paperback, electronic, and what else? Ebook formats. So formerly The Rise and Fall of a Social Network.
Chapter 12. It was the following evening, and the formerly team was out for drinks at a cocktail bar in Covent Garden. There was standing room only by the time we arrived. Most people knocked off work while we were still sitting at our computer screens. Not that we were bothered. As long as the booze was flowing, we were happy. Once every couple of months or so, we managed to talk John into releasing the credit card so that we could get loaded on company money. To us, it was one of the perks of the job. With no bill to worry about and a lot of steam to vent, those nights quickly got out of control. No one can party like a developer, especially when they're gearing up to move to Palo Alto. "I can't wait to go," Flick shouted, struggling to make her voice heard over the din of the other pundits. "It's going to be like a holiday every day." "I don't know about that," I told her. "We'll still have to work, and we'll be living at the office too. There'll be no excuse not to work." "So?" she said. "It worked for John and Peter. What are you afraid of?" "I'm not afraid of anything." "So you're in? You're up for the move?" "Hell yeah," Flick replied. "I already spoke to my dad and he's cool with it. He says he'll come and stay once we've settled in, but I'm not so sure." "What about your mum? What does she think?" "Mum's dead, Dan. She died when I was little." "Oh yeah," I said. "I forgot." "Forget about it. We're here and that's what matters. Anyway, let's change the subject. Abby," she said, tapping the developer on the shoulder. "What about you?" "What about me?" he replied. Flick laughed. "Are you coming to Palo Alto?" "I don't think so," he said. "It sounds like an adventure." "And that's a problem?" I asked. "Of course," he snapped. "I have a family to think about. What about my parents, my grandparents, not to mention Sonal?" "Who?" asked Flick, signalling to Peter across the bar and pointing to her empty glass. The founder nodded, grinned, and turned back to his conversation with John. "Sonal's my wife," Abby said. "I have a life. I have to provide for Sonal and our children. Our first one's on the way." "So provide for them in Palo Alto," I said. "Bring them with you." "No, sir," he replied. "A wife and kids locked up in Formerly's new complex? No one wants that. Not them, not you, not anyone. Have you ever tried to code with a screaming baby in the room right next to you? Besides, Peter said we can stay here. We're keeping a skeleton staff in the UK just in case." "Just in case of what?" "I guess we'll find out soon enough," he grumbled, draining his glass and setting it down on a nearby table. "I've got a bad feeling about this place. I'm going to get another drink." From there, the night took a slow but inevitable turn for the worst. Now that Abby had opened up, he didn't seem to care what we thought of him. Now that Pandora's box was open, all bets were off. He was throwing back double Jaeger bombs and leading the call for shots, and no one had the heart to argue with him. Outside, over a cigarette that we shared despite neither of us being smokers, he told me his plan. "I'm staying at Formerly," he said, "until the baby's born. Then I'm demanding paternity leave and handing in my notice if the boys won't let me take it. Either way, I'm out of here, and they won't be able to do anything about it. They'll be on the other side of the ocean, and I'll be safe and sound with Sonal." We finished the cigarette and headed back inside, where John was the centre of attention. "I think you're going to like the place that Peter found," he was saying. "It's awesome. We're moving to the best place in the world. It's going to be like living and working in a playground." "I hate playgrounds," Kerry said morosely. "Always have, even as a kid." "That's because you're too fat to fit on the swings," John laughed. "Don't worry, buddy. You're going to love this one." "Don't you think it's going to be a little empty?" I asked. "How many of us will be living there?" "A couple of dozen to begin with. But we're thinking big, Dan. We've quadrupled in size since you joined us, and we're getting bigger all the time. We don't want any of you to leave us, so we're going to make damn sure we keep you fed, housed and watered. You make it sound like a cult, I said. John looked at me shrewdly through his beer goggles. Well, we are obsessed with death, he replied. Besides, if we are a cult, then it's your job to poison the Kool-Aid. And it's my job to get people to drink it, Flick laughed. After that, things got even hazier. I remember seeing Abby with a drink in each hand and a cigarette in his mouth, and Peter almost got into a fist fight with an overexcited punter who called his bluff. John and I had to separate the two of them while Flick looked on and laughed. Josh, one of our juniors, threw up in the street and had to be sent home in the back of a taxi. Even Niels made an appearance. I'm only coming out for one, he'd said. He ended up staying out until 2 in the morning. Abby was nowhere to be found, and Flick, John and Peter were in the middle of a heated discussion that I couldn't be bothered to get involved in. Kerry was at the bar with one of our junior developers, who'd put in a good effort despite arriving late. The two guys were chatting to a couple of women, the sort of girls who'd follow a guy to the bathroom for a double vodka and coke. I wanted no part in it. The last thing I remember was catching Flick and Peter with their tongues down each other's throats on the dance floor. Realization hit me, like the alcohol hit me every time I went outside for a breath of fresh air. I liked her. I liked her a lot. But I was pissed and pissed off, and she was all over Peter. I picked up my coat and walked out onto the street. I woke up on the doorstep of John's flat. The silence of the night-struck city had been replaced by the singing of the birds and the hum of the commuter traffic. I was still drunk and I felt more tired than ever. From across the road, a young woman watched me from the corner of her eye as she climbed into her car. I struggled to breathe over the stench of my own sweat-stained clothing and wondered what the hell I was going to do next. My watch read 7:45 a.m. I checked my pockets for my phone, my keys and my wallet, and I was relieved to find all 3 of them. I picked myself up from my perch, dusted myself down and headed towards the office. I expected to be the only one there, but I was wrong. I spotted the commotion as soon as I rounded the corner and began my final approach. Our parking spaces, which were usually empty because none of us could be bothered to drive, were unusually full. I spotted a couple of vans from regional news teams, and there was even a police car in a spot by the entrance. "Excuse me," I said, pushing my way past a group of journalists in warm overcoats who were camping outside the entrance. One guy thrust a camcorder in my face and asked me for a comment, and then cursed as I brushed his hand away and sent it clattering across the asphalt. Just as I thought he was about to take a swing at me, Niels surfaced and escorted me inside. I knew something was wrong immediately. The office was in disarray, and Flick was sobbing at her desk. Kerry was there too, looking worried and sipping absently at a cup of coffee. John was in the boardroom. I could see him through the glass, talking to a pair of uniformed policemen. There was no sign of the rest of the team. "Kerry, what's going on?" I asked. He looked up at me slowly. "Didn't you hear the news? It's Abby. He's dead."
That was an excerpt from formerly The Rise and Fall of a Social Network by myself, Dane Cobain. You're listening to The Art Show on 106.6 FM Wickham Sound, and this is Straight 8 with Sweet Soul Music.
Day now, I know they look great now. Singing Everyone has a voice. We just want to be heard. Everyone has a voice. We just want to be heard. And I saw him reaching out for more. Reaching out for more. I saw him reaching out for more. Reaching out for more. Reaching out for more. More. Reaching out for more.
That was Reaching Out by Chiltern Groove, and before that we had Sweet Soul Music by Straight 8. You're listening to The Art Show on 106.6 FM Wickham Sound. I'm your host, Dane Cobain, and I'm here in conversation now with Dale McGinnes from Chiltern Groove. What was the last book that you read, and what did you think of it?
What was the last book that I read? I'm currently I'm quite slow at reading. I'm teaching at the moment as well, so I'm pretty full on. But I've got what I think about when I think about running.
Oh, cool.
By Murakami, yeah.
Yeah, I've read that one. Yeah, it's really interesting. Yeah, because it's like I don't know. I guess like I'm not much of like a runner or anything myself, but obviously like I'm a writer, and it's got a bit of the running and a bit of the writing stuff in it. And it was just interesting, like the way he talked, because he talked about how, I don't know if you got to the bit yet, but he talked about like how it's better than having a job. Like he'll go out for a run each day, and people are like, how can you go for a run each day? And he's like, well, I'd rather go for a run each day than spend an hour on a packed commuter train each day. Which I think is a good way of looking at it,
Yeah. Well, yeah, so many positives to having and going for a good run. So
yeah,
I'm all for it.
Awesome. Cool. Okay, so obviously I want to mostly chat to you about music today. And I thought a good place to start would be to ask how long you've been making music and how you got your start with music.
So yeah, I've got a bit of a musical family. Like a couple of my uncles are musicians, which I think influenced me quite on. And just really got into music like when I was, as a teenager in the sort of 90s. I got into I listened to like all sorts, and I'm quite a curious kind of person. I was in a ska punk band when I was in my sort of late teens, early 20s, which was really, really fun. And then did a little project after that, which didn't really go that far. And then literally like a few years ago, well, it must be like two and a bit years ago now. Just had the bug for it. Just really wanted to write. I was sort of in between doing lots of different things and needed a good outlet of creativity, which I wasn't really getting. And then I suppose I wanted to, like a lot of these bands are now that I sort of used to listen to back then, sort of having a revival, I guess, and never look back.
Awesome, cool. And do you play any instruments, or do you just do vocals?
No, I play guitar, so I write all the songs, I write all the chord structures for all the guitar parts. I've written some of the bass parts as well. I play a bit of bass as well.
Awesome, cool. And who else is in the band, and what does everybody do in the band?
Yeah, so I've got Ben on bass. He came in first. If you've ever seen us, he's a pretty huge guy. Plays a big sort of 5-string bass. He's a really, really, really good player. He's coming from out Tameway. I've got a really interesting guy called Alex, on guitar, and he's from Bulgaria, and he's a very sort of experienced musician. Played in a lot of punk bands, ska bands, reggae stuff, like all sorts out there. He's very technical guy, very thorough, like really knows his stuff. So it's a real, and he does backing vocals for us as well. If you asked him that question, he can play like everything. Yeah, he gets on the drum kit and the bass and the guitar, and he can do a bit of keys and sing and all sorts. He's a really talented guy. And then we've got James on drums, who came in a bit later. Similar sort of thing to me. He'd actually never been in a band before, but sort of went quite fairly high in his grades and that when he was younger, and just had the bug in the same way that I did. And he's been a really good addition, really great guy.
Cool, awesome. And where does the name come from as well? Like, or who came up with the name?
Yeah, we were playing for ages. So when we set up the band, we sort of played for a bit, and then COVID and all that happened in the middle of it. So we went for quite a long time without having a name. But we wanted to give it some sort of identity. Alex is based in Wickham as well, and I've been based in Wickham for quite a while. So it's like our hometown. We wanted to have some sort of connection with the location, really. Like, we're not in London, like sort of a lot of bands or big cities like that. So we brought the Chiltern into it. And we're trying to sort of tag things on the end of Chiltern, and playing around with things for ages, and groove just seemed the right word to fit what we're doing.
Yeah, it definitely goes well with your sound as well. And speaking of your sound, I wondered, like, who are some of the influences? So you've kind of mentioned genres. Are there any acts in particular that kind of inspire what you guys do?
Well, one of my good friends, Tim, I used to work with, introduced me to the Skins, as being a sort of contemporary reggae band, and a bit of ska and all that sort of stuff in there. So that was quite a big sort of move to inspire me to want to start up a band again, really.
Yeah.
And then some of that sort of more contemporary stuff, and they've got Gentleman's Dub Club, are pretty big now. But was massively into all the sort of third wave, as it's called, third wave of ska punk in the sort of late 90s, the early noughties, and around that sort of period. And all the sort of historical sort of ska bands and whatnot, the Specials and Madness, and I love my sort of reggae music as well. All those sort of guys. So all over that genre. I just love music. I'm always just lapping up everything that's going, really.
Cool. And I want to talk a little bit more about COVID, because one of the things I was wondering, you mentioned you kind of formed just before all of that sort of started happening. How did that affect you guys, like your development? Did you manage to find some sort of socially distant ways to practice? And how were you using that time? Were you using that as like songwriting time, or how did you guys cope?
Yeah, it was really interesting, because we were just sort of starting to get things going. I think James had just come in. We had a different drummer before we were playing around with for a bit. And I know you're a musician as well, and I'm sure you know the pain of trying to get a group of adults together regularly is quite a difficult challenge, and we were sort of going through that at the start as well. And COVID hit, and then we were sort of asking the questions of does everyone actually want to do this, because we're sort of struggling to get together and all that sort of thing. And everyone's like, no, definitely. And we managed to, basically, when it was appropriate, we would be able to play. Like I did write, get down and write some songs and that. At that time I was furloughed for a lot of it as well, so I did start writing, but then we really got very productive once it all kicked off again.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, I wanted to ask as well, because obviously the kind of style of music you play is kind of, it'll get people up dancing. It's quite a happy kind of sound, as opposed to, I don't know, sometimes like, you get your sort of sad singer-songwriters and stuff. And do you think, like, do we need more music like that, given that we've had a dark couple of years with COVID and goodness knows what else going on? Like, do you think there's more of a need for that kind of music that people can just dance to and have a good time to?
Yeah, I think so. That was part of it. I think when I first started wanting to start a band again, I think I was in a place where I wasn't feeling great myself, and feeling pretty down. And I think ska music, even if you don't really like this genre, you can't help but sort of tap your toe and feel good. And we wanted to, I think that's really important. I wouldn't like to say whether we need more of it, because I think there are sort of people out there doing it. It depends on what sort of music you're accessing, really.
Yeah.
But I hope, people get a sense of fun and a sense of enjoyment out of it, for sure.
Great. And, you've played a few gigs around Wickham sort of over the last few months even. And I wondered, like, what are some of the most memorable gigs that you've played so far, sort of in and around Wickham?
We played, going back a few months, we did the jam night at the Bellevue, which was really, really good. They sort of didn't know who we were or what to expect or anything, and sort of had to. It's quite competitive down there to get a slot and everything. I was down there dead early to try and get on, and that was really great. We had a really lovely response from everybody over there. That was pretty awesome. We played at Mad Squirrel in the town centre a couple of weeks ago. That really went off. Like there was a good crowd there. Played with the Useless Eaters, so it was packed out, and I think we're a lot more confident and sharper and stuff like that now. We're like really tight. And that really went off. People were screaming for an encore. So that was really sort of memorable moment. And of course, going back to Frogfest was our first gig. It was our maiden voyage. When we was there back in May. It was really great. A lot of people there, and I've been involved in Frogfest before, and it's such a wonderful thing for the town.
Yeah, and that's a really good one to start with, I think, as well. You're listening to The Art Show on 106.6 FM Wickham Sound. I'm your host, Dane Cobain. I'm here in conversation with Dale McGinnes from Chiltern Groove, and this is Chiltern Groove themselves with Tune In.
I wanna tune in to your station. So tell me, girl, what's on your frequency? Want to connect? If you just let me, I wanna know what gives you that feeling. Maybe one day you can dance in my kitchen. Tune in, I wanna tune in. Tune in, I wanna tune in to your station. When I'm in my car, I tune in digital. When I'm at home, I like it physical. I like to chill with a record spinning. But all I wanna know is just what gets you singing. Tune in, I wanna tune in. Tune in, I wanna tune in to your station. If we start a rhythm, can you keep it in time? If you need more power, get it amplified. 'Cause when we're in tune, the melody is sweeter, like my snare drum tight and my bass line deeper. Tune in, I wanna tune in. Tune in, I wanna tune in to your station. All I wanna know is just what gets you singing. All I wanna know, I wanna tune in. All I wanna know is just what gets you singing. All I wanna know to your station.
That was Tune In by Chiltern Groove. You're listening to The Art Show on 106.6 FM Wickham Sound. I'm your host, Dane Cobain, and I'm here in conversation now with Dale McGinnes from Chiltern Groove. And I wanted to ask you, like, from your point of view, as part of the band and whatnot, what do you think makes a good live show? What is it that, when you do a set, that makes you think, that went really great, or you're really happy with it?
Well, it's always about the people, isn't it? The people in the room. Like we played, we went over and were fortunate enough to play over at Bunkfest in Wallingford a while ago. We did 4 gigs over the weekend, which were really wide ranging from, we played like one little hotel thing like in the middle of the day, and it was a lot of sort of quiet, folky sort of stuff then. It was barely anyone there, and it was quite flat, and we because there's not really many people there to vibe off of, so it's a bit more, it throws sort of different challenges to you. But the day before we played in front of thousands of people really, and that was absolutely incredible. And yeah, you just got to bring the energy, and I think it's always good. We speak about it quite a lot, like performing live. I think you've got to invite the audience to feel like they're part of the show. Like you're not just throwing stuff at them, like they should be part of it. And it's a communal thing.
Yeah, like a collaborative kind of process.
Absolutely, yeah.
And speaking about like the audience and the people, who are some of the biggest supporters of the band that you've got? Like, who are some people you'd shout out as people who, you know, really sort of fought your corner for you?
Yeah, I've got a good thing with Eddie O'Toole. Does his little DJ show. He's always giving me sort of shout outs and stuff, and has dropped the bounds in it before. Obviously it's our close like friends and family, you know, have been really big supporters. So of course, yeah, got to give all them a good shout out. And you know, even my parents have come down to a few gigs, which is really quite nice. And you know, they've been the people that have you know, let us have amps and stuff in the car, you know, taking us to places when we were younger and making noise in the house and all that sort of stuff. And my dad's a big he's not a musician but a big music fan, sort of a big influence as well. So they've been incredibly supportive. So yeah, I've got to give them a big shout out.
Cool. And when you guys play, like, I think you do covers and originals, right?
Yeah, we do. We're doing one cover. We're just dropping a new one soon, which we're quite excited about. But yeah, it's mostly original stuff. Yeah.
Cool. And when you're writing them, and you mentioned again you're doing a lot of this, or the songwriting. What's more important to you? Is it music or lyrics?
They kind of come at the same time. Like sometimes I'm thinking of concepts and I'll jot down like little things that sound like they might be like an interesting lyric. I'll just punch things in on my phone. Sometimes I'm sort of hashing out chord sequences, and then you know, you sort of fit in lyric, like the feel of the song, and lyrically will be led by the sort of melody of what's going on musically. So yeah, it can work either way for me.
Cool. And so you've sent me some tracks to play on the show. And I wondered, like, how do you go about recording them?
Yeah, so we did some rough on recordings with the guys at the uni actually, and they probably deserve a shout out. Roy and Tony, they've gone out working on a big project in New York, which is great. We'll give them a shout out. Standby crew, so they're offering sort of free recording, music production, all that for you know, disadvantaged kids in the Bronx, which is a really great project. And they offered us to go over there and record a few tracks. And one thing I've learned with recording is you really get to know the songs by hashing them out that much. So it's a really good experience. And then I'm also sort of friends with through my brother, a guy called Dane, who runs a really top end studio, Crescent Records in where's that, over in Swindon. And yeah, through that connection, and yeah, we went out there and wanted you know, so yeah, better quality. Like the uni stuff was good, but you know, as they said, you know, it's set up for more for teaching. And we went a different environment. We went over to Damon and got some sort of some stuff we're more happy with, I guess.
Yeah.
And the band's evolved since then and moved on, and we were a bit more prepared for it. So we're really pleased with what came out.
Yeah. Well, I guess as well, you saying of like how when you're recording them, it really sort of forces you to get to know the songs. And I suppose the more you practice them in like a live setting, and even practicing for gigs, you know, the more you get to know the song, so that when it does come to recording, you've got a better idea of the sort of sound you're going for.
Yeah, definitely. And also it's having someone there, you know, working with the guys at the uni and with Damon in particular, like they're giving us some sort of production advice as well. They're hearing it from different ears, and with their sort of knowledge, they're throwing that in there as well, and throwing different ideas at us, and we'll hash those out. And that's a really important part of the recording process is you know, having those discussions with the people around you.
Cool. And so do you have any like albums or EPs out? And if so, can you tell us about them?
No, so the tracks I sent you will be the first time they've been heard, actually. Awesome. And they are going to be available on streaming platforms. I think I'm aiming on it. I know I'm gonna be arranging it this week, but I'm gonna aim for the 29th. We're playing at Wycombe Wanderers on the 29th.
Oh, cool.
So that might be a nice release date. So the two tracks you've got are going to be fresh, exclusive plays, and they'll be out available soon. And then in the future, we'll look to get a little 7-inch vinyl, probably a nice little single made out of those two.
Nice, awesome, cool. So we've kind of covered about some of your influences, but how would you like describe your sound? And this is a very difficult question to answer, but give it a go.
Ska, quite ska led. There's always a sort of that offbeat sort of skank on the guitar in most of the tracks, and ska would be sort of the more up tempo and more of those sort of walking bass lines. And we do some sort of slower stuff, which would be more sort of reggae kind of vibe, and then you've got the rock steady kind of sound, which is a bit more in between the two. But it's definitely got a lot of influence from all those sounds, maybe the Caribbean and the sort of when it got mixed up with sort of rock and roll and whatnot from the US, and then with the ska stuff that launched out over there and then came over here, and with the guys like the Specials and whatnot. So there's a bit of that in there. Like the others don't really agree. I feel lyrically sometimes I do listen to a bit of hip hop sometimes, not loads, but there's a bit of that. I like to get in there with sort of some of my delivery, and then we're quite open. There's a bit of sort of funk vibes to it as well in places. That was pretty cool. Where we're at, and evolving all the time. We're working on some stuff at the moment. It's got a bit of overdrive going on, and
awesome,
evolving all the time.
Cool. Okay, great. So I've only got a few more questions left. One of the ones I wanted to ask you specifically, is there anything else creative that you do, or are you just sort of all about the music?
Well, I'm an artist as well, so I make work when I can. I'm actually an art teacher, so
cool.
I've got all that going on all the time. So sort of visually, audio. I like to throw myself at everything, really. I sort of make paintings, installations, sculptures, all sorts.
Awesome. And what bands, sort of past or present, would you most like to support? So even again, you could have Bob Marley if you wanted to. Obviously he's not touring at the moment for obvious reasons, but any band sort of throughout history, who would you most likely to support?
Bob's got to be up there. He's absolutely humongous. Like the Specials would be really, really sort of fun in that sort of two-tone stuff. I saw Gentleman's Dub Club recently for the first time, and they were absolutely insane as a live band. They were, I don't think I've seen a live performance like that. And talking about that, reacting with the crowds and everything. Obviously, music's a very personal thing, and people will have different emotional responses to things, but they know how to work a crowd, and they were really, really good. So I'd love to get on the bill with them for sure.
Cool. And just the last one, it's technically two. So what's next for you, and where can people go to find out more? Where can people follow you?
Follow us on the socials. So at Chiltern Groove, we are on Facebook and Instagram. We are playing at Wycombe Wanderers on the 29th, which I'm going to aim for potentially launching those two singles, which will be out on all the sort of major streaming platforms. At that time, we're playing a nice little gig at the Front Room on the 11th of November. It's a Friday night. We've got booked in the Bellevue for our own gig on the 9th of December as well. So that's our sort of main stuff booked in the moment. And we'd love to see as many people as possible down there.
Awesome.
Have some fun.
Big thank you to Dale for joining me. You're listening to The Art Show on 106.6 FM Wycombe Sound. I'm your host, Dane Cobain, and this is Lost Soul by Humans Can't Reboot.
searching for some happiness in my life, oblivious and forgotten. Shall I use this night? In this world I feel so empty and lonely. Loneliness seems to be my one and only. I've been losing more of myself day by day. Nobody seems to notice the pain on my face. I'm an old soul encased in a young body. Sleeping has become a new favorite hobby. Life has become very lonely and tiring. I don't know much, but I'm still breathing. I'm not living my life, losing slow motion. Lost soul, wandering in endless ocean. Wandering in endless ocean. Tried so hard to be normal once or twice, but those were the worst days of my life. I've tried to drink away the lonely nights, but my pain knows how to swim, and so it survived. I feel so lost, so deep inside of myself. Feel like I've lost all my beauty and wealth. Maybe I'll be alright one day, I say. It'll take more than words for my pain to go away. Life has become very lonely and tiring. I don't know much, but I'm still breathing. I'm not living my life, losing slow motion. Lost soul, wandering in endless ocean. Wandering in endless ocean. I wanna sleep until I'm healed. No amount of rest can cure the way I feel. Wanna ease the pain and tiredness within, so I'll just pretend to be okay and hope one day I'll wait. It's become very lonely and tiring. I don't know much, but I'm still breathing. I'm not living my life, losing slow motion. Lost soul, wandering in endless ocean. Wandering in endless ocean.
Found her one night outside in the cold. Offered all my jacket to keep her warm. She smoked skinny cigarettes and wore cheap perfume. Tried for small town elegance, but it's not the real you. So where does the truth start and where is the lie? Tell me your hopes and dreams, what keeps you up at night? The red lipstick you wear, where'd you get it from? And this facade of elegance, did you pick it up from your mom? Your sailor tattoos show the real you. Miles you sailed to get away. Your sailor tattoos show the real you. Miles you sailed to get away. And what I think is the truth isn't in the pictures you place on your person. And all I know is what you show. So go ahead and show me more than skin deep. More than skin deep. You got a penchant for film noir, and poet lives in your heart. Is it Browning, Claire, or Poe? But I know deep down you're just like me, unsophisticated, unrefined, and crass. And the truth comes out all at once, and you paint yourself in words. My canvas is full with the colors of you, some bright, some dark, but that's who you are. And what I think the truth isn't in the pictures you place on your person. And all I know is what you show. So go ahead and let me see more than skin deep. More than skin deep. More than skin deep. More than skin deep.
That was Skin Deep by Jake Cooper, and before that we had Lost Soul by Humans Can't Reboot. You're listening to The Art Show on 106.6 FM Wickham Sound. I'm your host, Dane Cobain, and it's time for us to head over to the Ilk Shed now to catch up with Twangling Jack Ford for this week's album review.
Rave On, the essential recordings of Buddy Holly. When I was a kid, back in the 405 lines monochrome early 60s, I followed the hit parade. We had beat groups. There was Mersey beat, like the Beatles, Jerry and the Pacemakers and the Searchers. There were the ones we thought were Mersey beat because they came from a place not far from Liverpool. The Hollies, Freddie and the Dreamers, Herman's Hermits. And there was even the Tottenham beat of the Dave Clark Five. It seemed there was a line between this music and the music of the 50s that we called rock and roll. Rock and roll seemed old-fashioned. Old guys like Chuck Berry and Little Richard in old-fashioned clothes, appearing in old-fashioned films and making Bakelite 78 RPM records. The one I had the least regard for was the one we kept seeing scratchy clips of, a guy whose tuxedo made him look like he was performing in a working man's club. A guy with an awful song that might have been some kind of joke, the way he kept repeating the name Peggy Sue and hiccuping in between. The only other thing this guy seemed to do was another awful song about the same person. It wasn't until the film That'll Be the Day came out that I found a Buddy Holly song I really liked. The blues turnaround on the title song grabs your attention and the chorus is irresistible. Somehow that film joined up the story of rock for me, with its 50s and early 60s songs, and one written by Pete Townsend of The Who. What really made me realise the importance of early rock and roll was pub rock. And when I looked at it closer, I realised that the original Buddy Holly and the Crickets were the model for most guitar rock. The rhythm guitar, lead guitar, bass and drum of the beat groups, punk and indie, the Beatles, the Clash, the Pixies and the ilk. I was fairly late starting to play the guitar because I believed you had to be able to play like Ritchie Blackmore. I should have started out listening to Buddy Holly records. The guitar is inventive within the style of the time. Double stops, part chords and extended arpeggios. Very little use of the blues scale and certainly no squealing bends. And everything is so clear, no distortion, just lots of echo and reverb. Bands like Buddy Holly and the Crickets played dances, and the songs have the rhythms young people would have danced to. Fast rockabilly with a slapping upright bass for a quick Lindy hop, and smoochy slow numbers. The tracks on this triple CD range from quite crude and basic band performances to big string productions on songs like True Love Ways and Raining in My Heart, where they also appear as pizzicato and in places a bit bluesy. And there was also those famous chimes. There are a lot of generic 12-bar numbers and 3-chord country tricks and a very cheap sounding chirpy organ. But there is some nice piano boogie and a touch of gospel. And all I can say is, oh boy, rave on, Buddy Holly.
Big thank you to Twangling Jack Ford for this week's album review. Thank you to Dale McGinnes from Chiltern Groove for joining me. Thank you to all of the musicians whose music I've shared. As always, you can reach out to me here at the studio by dropping me an email on dane.cobain@wickhamsound.org.uk. That's dane.cobain@wickhamsound.org.uk. I'm particularly keen to hear from poets, performers, musicians, people with MP3s to share, people involved in the local arts scene, people with news, etc. Do get in touch. You can also find us on Facebook. If you search for The Art Show on Wickham Sound, you should be able to find us. And we're repeated on Wickham Sound on Monday nights. We're on the Wickham Sound Listen Again. We're on iTunes, Spotify, and wherever else you get your podcasts. So that's about it for another week. I'm going to leave you with one last tune, and this is previous guest, Hogar's Wolf, with Poppy. I'll see you next week.
Chocolate bread, sweet poppy, unconventional, she's so witty. Benevolent love is a gift. Forever happy, she's a jolly play. Young enough to live day to day. Good to touch when the day disappoints. She wears a crown of sunset. The sudden curves and the devil glance. I done the ashen rapture of a moon-kissed midnight, where she revealed to me all the things of which I dreamed. Delicate yet silver bone. I knew that I would lose you. Warm affection, your aching embrace. Briefest, love's given time. Until it's too late to pay your costs. Warm affection, your aching embrace. Briefest, love given time. Beautiful things she said, like you so. Play bear, fill my mornings with sweet bird song. Fill passionate words thrill me with your lust, intoxicate me with your love. For you to me are the skies, the sea, the air, the fire, my world winter. Give me beautiful things, she said, like your soul, holy bear.